What if the moment you fall asleep is actually the most important moment of your entire day? Not because of rest, not because of dreams, but because it's the precise second your soul begins a journey far beyond anything your waking mind can imagine. Every night, without you realizing it, a hidden reality begins to unfold the instant your consciousness fades. That blankness you feel? It's not the end of awareness, it's the beginning of access. What if I told you that while your body lies still, your real self, the eternal part of you, starts to move? The sensation of falling into sleep isn't just a switch turning off, it's a doorway opening wide, separating you from the physical world and catapulting you into something infinitely more mysterious. Scientists will say your brain is entering sleep stages, but ancient traditions, mystics, and even Edgar Cayce pointed to something far more complex. That gap between wakefulness and unconsciousness is the entry point where your physical senses fade and your spiritual perception begins to sharpen. You've felt this moment before. That strange falling feeling just as you doze off. That brief jolt that wakes you up for a second, or the soft sense of drifting away while still being aware. These aren't accidents. They're markers, signals, reminders that a process is starting, a process where your soul begins to loosen from the chains of gravity and flesh. You're not going offline, you're going online in a completely different dimension. It's in this moment before dreams, before deep sleep, that the soul unhooks from the limitations of space and time. It begins to stretch, scan, and search. But this isn't a passive drifting. Your soul doesn't float aimlessly through clouds or fiction. No, it moves with direction, purpose, intention. In these first few moments, you're leaving the finite and stepping into the infinite. The body stays, but you, the you beyond your name, age, and history, start moving. And the places you're heading toward? They're not just dreams, they are realities. Unseen planes, energy fields, dimensions filled with knowledge, emotion, light, and sometimes darkness. These places have structure, they have laws, and they have memory, meaning your soul isn't just observing, it's participating, interacting, even recording everything it encounters. You see, you may think you're unconscious, but you're more conscious than ever, just not in the way you're used to. You're no longer using eyes to see or ears to hear. You're perceiving through something else. The soul sees through resonance. It hears through vibration. It learns through direct energetic experience. And while your physical body is lying in bed, maybe snoring or dreaming, your soul could be having conversations, facing challenges, or exploring possibilities that your waking self will only understand through intuition, inspiration, or déjà vu. And that's where things get even more fascinating, because the soul doesn't journey randomly. It follows a kind of spiritual compass. Each night, it travels to exactly where it needs to go, to grow, heal, remember, or prepare. Have you ever woken up with a sudden insight, or a completely new feeling towards someone in your life? That wasn't just sleep. That was the result of your soul's activity. It went somewhere, it experienced something, and it brought back change. But the real question is, where does it go? According to Edgar Cayce and countless ancient teachings, the soul moves through levels. Think of them like layers of invisible reality. At first, it might hover just outside the physical body, still close enough to your room, your bed, even your heartbeat. In this state, it processes recent memories, relives emotional situations, or begins healing whatever unresolved stress you've been carrying. You may feel like you're dreaming about your childhood home, your old school, or your current job, but it's not nostalgia. It's a kind of review, a cleansing, a way to process and let go. Then, if conditions are right, your soul moves deeper, into what's often called the astral plane. Here, thought becomes reality, desire becomes form. The rules of physics dissolve and are replaced by something much more direct: intention. This is where the soul learns through symbols, adventures, sometimes even confrontations. A peaceful night here could bring you visions of flying, discovery, joy. But if you carry unresolved trauma, heavy emotions, or fear, you may instead face symbolic nightmares that aren't just terrifying but instructional. The soul doesn't punish, it teaches. Even fear can be a lesson if you listen carefully. And then, for some, there's even more. A realm beyond emotion, beyond story. A place where the soul touches pure awareness. It doesn't happen every night, but when it does, it changes you. People wake up from these nights with a sense of clarity, peace, or purpose they can't explain. Some say they spoke with higher beings. Others describe simply knowing, something they've never read or heard before. These experiences are often brief, fleeting, but they leave a mark. They awaken something. They whisper, "There's more." And that's the truth Cayce was trying to tell us. Sleep isn't just a reset for the body, it's a passage. A nightly journey that, when understood, can unlock secrets about your past, your purpose, and even your future. Every night you're given access to realms that hold answers to the questions you've carried for years, but most people sleep through it, unaware. That doesn't have to be you. Once you realize what's happening, you can begin to prepare, to protect, to remember, and eventually to direct, because your soul already knows where to go. The only question is whether your conscious self is ready to follow. Have you ever noticed that strange jolt or sudden falling sensation just before slipping into sleep? The kind that makes your heart jump, your body twitch, and your eyes open in confusion. Most people brush it off as a random reflex, a glitch in the sleep process. But what if it's something much more profound, an ancient signal that your soul is beginning to separate from your physical body? Edgar Cayce wasn't alone in believing this. Across countless spiritual traditions, this moment has been described as sacred. The very instant the soul starts its nightly journey away from the dense confines of flesh and into the subtle, expansive worlds beyond. You don't feel your soul detaching in a violent way. It's gentle, layered. It starts with your senses fading, noticing that external sounds no longer matter, that the weight of your body begins to vanish, that the boundaries between skin and air dissolve. You are still you, but you begin to feel less attached to what that usually means. This quiet detachment is the first sign of separation. What happens next is the loosening of the invisible threads that bind you to your body. It's not fantasy, it's an energetic process that takes place in stages. Your soul, usually locked into place, starts to float, just slightly at first, hovering, observing, remembering its freedom. This isn't death, it's the most natural thing in the world. In fact, it happens to every human being, every night, regardless of belief, knowledge, or spiritual development. But the degree of awareness varies. Some people feel the shift and remember it, often mistaking it for a vivid dream or the eerie experience of floating above their own body. Others remain completely unconscious of the entire process, only to wake up feeling like they returned from somewhere distant without knowing where they went. This initial phase is like shedding a heavy coat. Your soul, confined all day in a dense, restrictive suit of muscles, bones, and neurons, finally breathes freely. And it begins to move or not randomly, but with purpose. Some nights it stays near, only inches above your physical form, barely crossing the veil between worlds. In this state, your dreams tend to be mundane. Maybe you're in your house, talking to someone familiar, doing something routine but with odd distortions. Extra doors in your childhood home, people alive and dead in the same conversation. These are not illusions. They are echoes, real memories, seen through the lens of a soul that is halfway in, halfway out. But when the soul separates more fully, when the silver cord that anchors it stretches further, the journey transforms. You are no longer dreaming, you are traveling. The soul begins to venture beyond the physical etheric field and into what many refer to as the astral planier dimension, where time and space lose their grip, where movement is instantaneous, and intention becomes the engine of experience. Imagine this. You think of a mountain, and you are there. You want to speak to someone, and they appear. There is no logic to obey here. The astral world is molded not by material law, but by energy, emotions, thoughts, spiritual weight. That's why some nights you find yourself flying freely, feeling limitless. And other nights, you are trapped in a nightmare where you're being chased, attacked, or lost. These aren't random. They are reflections, mirror images of your internal state, your unresolved fears, your soul's lessons. And this is where the real mystery begins. Because what your soul encounters in these astral journeys is not always of your own creation. There are places your soul goes that you've never imagined, realms that exist with or without your belief in them. Some are teaching grounds, places where you interact with higher intelligences, where you receive guidance for your waking life. Others are like emotional arenas, where you're forced to relive feelings you haven't resolved in order to finally release them. But there are also other travelers, their souls of people still living, who are also out of body. Have you ever dreamed of someone, and they said they dreamed of you too? That wasn't coincidence. You met in a place beyond matter, guided there for a reason. Not every soul travels far each night. Some remain close to the body, especially if the person is emotionally weighed down, physically ill, or spiritually blocked. But when the conditions are right, when the soul is light, clear, or seeking truth, it ascends higher. It breaks free from the lower levels of the astral and enters regions where light doesn't just illuminate, it teaches. These higher planes don't operate on visuals, they operate on direct knowing. You don't see images, you receive truths. You don't hear voices, you absorb messages. These moments are rare but unforgettable. They often return as a sudden flash of wisdom days later, an overwhelming sense that something is true without any evidence. An inner clarity that cuts through confusion like lightning. The kind of knowing that makes your mind go silent, not because it's uncertain, but because it finally understands. This is how the soul communicates. Through essence, not language. Through direct download, not discussion. And this is where things become life-changing. Because once you realize that every night, while your body sleeps, your soul is learning, healing, visiting realms of light or shadow, you begin to take your nights more seriously. You begin to understand why Cayce emphasized dreams so much. He didn't see dreams as symbols to decode for fun. He saw them as reports, spiritual logs of your soul's activity in other planes. Some dreams are personal messages, others are glimpses into future probabilities, and some are literal memories of where you went while your body stayed behind. So ask yourself, are you just sleeping, or are you traveling and forgetting it? Because the moment you accept that your soul leaves the body every night, everything changes. Sleep is no longer unconscious. It becomes sacred. The most important hours of your life may be the ones you've never remembered until now. There are mornings you wake up with a strange sense of certainty. Maybe it's a sudden solution to a problem that's been tormenting you for weeks. Or an unexpected urge to call someone you haven't spoken to in years. Maybe you wake with an overwhelming feeling of peace, even though the night before was filled with anxiety. These aren't random coincidences. These are messages, quiet transmissions brought back from a place your conscious mind can't reach, but your soul has just returned from. Edgar Cayce often said that sleep is when the soul leaves the body to receive instruction, not metaphorically, literally. While your body rests, your soul is in school, in therapy, in counsel, in motion, and what it brings back can shape the rest of your life if you're paying attention. Most people think of dreams as nonsense, mental noise, but that's only because they don't realize where those dreams are coming from. The symbolic images, the emotional atmospheres, the sudden flashes of light, or the appearance of someone who's passed on, these are not fantasy. These are fragments. Fragments of something very real that happened to your soul in a place beyond time and space. Your conscious mind can't interpret it clearly because it's filtering something non-physical through a physical brain. That's why the images often come out distorted, strange, or dreamlike. But behind the symbols, there's truth, there's guidance, there's memory. Sometimes the messages are gentle, a dream that reminds you of someone you've neglected, nudging you to reconnect. Other times, they're more urgent, a warning of a danger ahead, a symbolic confrontation that your soul needs to work through before it manifests in your physical life. Edgar Cayce spoke often about prophetic dreams that reveal future events, not because fate is fixed, but because your soul is trying to prepare you, give you the awareness to change the outcome. If you've ever dreamt something strange and then days later watched it happen in real life, you've glimpsed the power of the soul's nightly access to what he called the universal mind. But the most powerful dreams, the ones you never forget, are often healing missions. You don't remember the details, but you wake up with less pain in your heart, a quiet calm that wasn't there the day before, a burden lifted without explanation. During these nights, your soul has been working, repairing wounds, dissolving attachments, receiving energy from places of higher light. These aren't fantasies. They are treatments. Your soul carries trauma, fear, guilt, all of it. And while the body rests, it seeks healing from the spiritual dimensions it can only access while free from the weight of the physical form. Some of the greatest inner transformations don't happen in therapy sessions or meditation. They happen while you sleep, in silence, under starlight, far from this world. But there's another side, one that's rarely discussed. Because if your soul can access healing, guidance, and wisdom, then what else might it encounter? What else might be out there in those invisible layers of reality? Cayce hinted at it, and so have thousands of other mystics, dreamers, and travelers, that not every force in these realms is benevolent. There are also watchers, feeders, shadows, and if you're not prepared, if you don't protect your energy, you can return from these journeys more drained than when you left. There are times you sleep 8 hours and wake up more exhausted than the night before. You drag through the day, foggy, anxious, unsettled. There's no reason you can point to, but something feels off, as if your energy was pulled from you. This is not just poor sleep quality. This can be a sign that your soul encountered interference, something it did not ask for, did not invite, but could not avoid. Because just as there are higher planes filled with light and healing, there are also lower layers filled with confusion, chaos, and spiritual parasites. Beings that exist on the astral level, not by creating their own energy, but by feeding off others. These aren't horror movie monsters. They're real, subtle, often unnoticed. They latch onto frequency, not flesh. Meaning they can't attack your body, but they can hook into your soul's field while it travels. They feed off what you carry. Fear, guilt, rage, sadness. That's their nourishment. And if you go to sleep emotionally unprotected, unresolved, unbalanced, they find you, and they feed. Sometimes it's just a trace. You wake up a little off, but it passes. Other times, it lingers. Nightmares that feel engineered to provoke terror. Scenarios that go far beyond normal anxiety dreams. And sometimes, especially after intense emotional days, you find yourself in a dream that feels more real than real, where something dark is watching, chasing, or controlling the dream. This isn't your subconscious. It's something else, something foreign. These entities are drawn to chaotic energy. That's why people who live in constant stress, who hold grudges, who dwell in anger or self-loathing, tend to have more disturbed sleep. They emit a spiritual signal that attracts unwanted attention. And the more it happens, the more those entities learn your patterns. Some become familiar. They return. Not because you're cursed, but because you haven't cleared the space. You haven't recognized that your soul's nightly journey is not just an adventure, it's a battlefield. There are rare cases where people report waking up with physical symptoms. Bruises, scratches, heavy pressure on the chest, sleep paralysis with the presence of something ominous in the room. Not every one of these experiences is supernatural, but many are. And the consistency of these stories across cultures, time periods, and belief systems suggests something very real is happening beneath the surface of sleep. Cayce warned that spiritual protection is not optional. It's essential. Just as we lock our doors at night to protect the body, we must shield our soul before sleep. The good news? These entities have no power unless you give it to them. Your intention, your emotional state, and your spiritual practices are your defense. When you go to sleep in fear, unresolved pain, or chaos, you open doors. But when you go to sleep with gratitude, clarity, and light, you build walls. The soul cannot be possessed, but it can be influenced, and knowing that puts the power back in your hands. You are not defenseless. You were never meant to be. But you were meant to remember what's at stake. Because your soul is doing more at night than you ever imagined. And not all of it is safe by default. That's why awareness matters. That's why spiritual hygiene matters. That's why Cayce and so many others try to tell us, sleep is not just for rest. It is sacred. It is a passage. And if you don't guard that passage, someone or something else might walk through it. There's an invisible thread connecting your soul to your physical body, a spiritual tether that ancient mystics and modern sensitives alike have described across cultures, across time. Edgar Cayce called it the silver cord, and it's far more than a poetic metaphor. It's your soul's lifeline. The cord is what allows your consciousness to separate from the body during sleep, to explore, to travel, to learn, and always find its way back. Without it, your soul wouldn't be anchored. And that anchoring, though unseen, is what ensures that your nightly journeys don't become permanent departures. This silver cord has been observed by near-death experiencers, astral projectors, lucid dreamers, and spiritual practitioners for centuries. It's described as a shimmering filament of energy, radiant, flexible, almost liquid light in nature, connecting from the body, usually near the heart or solar plexus, the non-physical soul as it moves freely in other planes. No matter how far the soul travels, this cord remains intact, stretching across dimensions, transmitting experience, memory, healing, and wisdom back to the physical form. It's a sacred connection, and it's more alive than you think. It pulses with your heartbeat. It resonates with your emotional state. When you're in good spiritual health, the silver cord glows strong and vibrant. But when you're overwhelmed with fear, rage, grief, or prolonged trauma, the cord begins to dim. It may become thin, frayed, or tangled. Some sensitive individuals have even described seeing knots or shadowy residues clinging to it. These are not hallucinations, they are energetic feedback. Your soul is trying to tell you that something within your waking life is weakening the bridge between spirit and matter. And when that happens, strange symptoms can begin to appear. You may experience difficulty staying grounded, a feeling of being dissociated, vivid dreams that bleed into waking life, a sense of floating through your day, disconnected, foggy. These are not psychological glitches. They are spiritual warnings that your cord is strained. And when the cord is under stress, your nighttime experiences become less protected. You may travel, but without full energetic support. You may wake up feeling scattered, drained, or not fully back. There have even been reports, rare but significant, of the cord being temporarily damaged. In extreme cases of emotional collapse, substance abuse, or sudden trauma, the connection may become so unstable that the soul has difficulty reintegrating. People who've experienced this often describe it as a haunting sensation, like part of them is still elsewhere, unable to fully return. They speak of confusion, emptiness, or moments of overwhelming detachment that cannot be explained by the physical. And this is why caring for your emotional and energetic health during the day is crucial. You are not just preparing for the next day, you're preparing for where your soul will travel that night. And where it goes depends, in large part, on the condition of the cord that holds you. Now, here's something even more fascinating. The silver cord is not just a safety tether, it's also a channel. It transmits everything your soul learns or receives while away from the body. Healing, insight, warnings, even spiritual upgrades, these are all downloaded through the silver cord into your nervous system, into your cells. That sudden sense of inner peace you feel the moment you wake up. That clarity of thought after a confusing dream. That urge to do something you never considered before. These aren't random. They are signals that have traveled through your cord, back into your waking self. And the more consciously you care for your cord, the more precise those transmissions become. Your sleep becomes less about rest and more about integration living, a life informed not just by experience, but by multidimensional wisdom. But what happens when your soul begins to outgrow passive sleep? What happens when it's no longer content with wandering and forgetting? That's when the dream changes. That's when awareness begins to bleed into the night. You wake up remembering more. You feel things that don't match your waking reality. You begin to sense that your dreams are not just dreams. And then, something extraordinary happens. You become conscious inside the dream. The moment you realize you're dreaming while still inside the dream world, everything shifts. This is lucid dreaming, not a fantasy, not a technique reserved for a few gifted individuals, but a natural ability of the soul to awaken inside its own journeys. And once you gain awareness, you no longer drift, you direct. In that instant, You are no longer a passive observer of your soul's nightly travels. You are the pilot, the architect. You realize you can shape the dream, fly, walk through walls, conjure a person just by thinking of them, visit a memory, revisit a wound, ask a question and receive a response not from your mind, but from the deeper realms your soul now moves through with purpose. But even more powerful than the abilities, the flight, the freedoms, the access. Because in a lucid dream, you can move into planes most people only reach unconsciously. You can call forth a spiritual guide. You can meet the higher version of yourself. You can request healing for something that's haunted you for years, and often you'll receive it not in words, but in energy, in feeling, in symbolic experience that rewires something inside you that talk therapy or medication never touched. This is why ancient mystics saw lucid dreaming not as escape, but as evolution, a way to accelerate spiritual growth by collapsing the barrier between soul and awareness. But with power comes responsibility. Not every lucid dream is safe by default. The brighter your awareness burns in those planes, the more visible you become. Entities that would normally ignore you may notice. Beings that feed on chaos, confusion, or fear may attempt to interfere. That's why spiritual preparation is vital before diving deep into this practice. You need to cleanse, protect, ground. Lucid dreaming isn't a toy, it's a tool. And when used properly, it becomes one of the most transformative experiences your soul can undergo. One of the most profound moments possible in a lucid dream is to call out and meet your higher self. Not an angel, not a spirit guide, but you, the version of you that exists beyond time, beyond fear, beyond limitation. This encounter can feel like standing before a being of light who knows every lifetime you've ever lived and everyone you've yet to experience. In its presence, your questions melt away. You don't just understand your path, you feel it. The purpose, the plan, the peace. Even a few seconds in this state can alter the course of your entire waking life. That's how powerful it is. And yet, many waste this gift. Some chase thrills. Others become addicted to the control, the fantasy. They begin to sleep more not for rest, but to escape. That's when imbalance creeps in. Because the purpose of lucid dreaming isn't to hide from life, it's to illuminate it. What you gain in the astral must be brought back and integrated into the physical. Wisdom means nothing if it stays trapped in dreamland. You are here, now, in a body, for a reason. And lucid dreaming should help you fulfill that reason, not avoid it. So, if your dreams have been shifting, if you've been feeling more awake while asleep, if you've sensed that something important is beginning to unfold in your night's trusted, your soul is evolving. The veil is thinning. The journey has only just begun. Once you begin to realize that your soul travels each night, the next question becomes almost unavoidable. Can you choose where it goes? Can you train yourself to guide it, to explore specific realms, to ask questions and return with answers that change your waking life? The truth is not only yes you can, but that you were always meant to. Most people drift unconsciously through sleep, guided by emotional residue, karmic lessons, or instinctive spiritual pulls. But that's the unconscious version of the journey. When you step into it consciously, with clarity and intention, something incredible begins to happen. Your nights become tools, laboratories, temples, and you're no longer at the mercy of random dreams. You become the conscious navigator of your soul's evolution. But this isn't something you stumble into blindly. Just like any sacred practice, this takes training, discipline, intention. The first step is preparing your energy before sleep. The emotional state you fall asleep in matters more than anything else. If you go to bed, consumed by anger, grief, fear, or distraction, you anchor your soul to lower vibrations. And in those frequencies, your soul cannot ascend to the higher realms of insight and guidance. It becomes stuck in the dense layers of unresolved experience, and the dreams you receive are often confusing, distorted, or even draining. But when you go to sleep in a state of peace by expressing gratitude, by practicing forgiveness, by calming the mind and centering the heart, you lift your frequency. And at that vibration, your soul is free to rise. That rising takes you through planes, and each plane has its own rules. You begin in the physical etheric, the energetic blueprint of the waking world. In this layer, your soul can review your day, revisit moments that require reflection, or interact with others who are also in the sleep state. You might dream of familiar places or conversations, often slightly altered. These aren't hallucinations, they are meetings, exchanges. Sometimes they involve healing old tensions. Sometimes they involve sending or receiving messages. But when you bring awareness to these moments, when you wake up and reflect, ask what the soul was trying to process. You transform an ordinary dream into a memory of spiritual work. From there, your soul may travel to the intermediate astral plane. This is where thought becomes creation. Your emotions become the palette, and your mind becomes the brush. If you're afraid, your fears manifest. If you're joyful, the landscape responds in kind. It is here that most of the so-called crazy dreams happen, flying, shape-shifting, bizarre symbols, surreal scenarios. But they aren't nonsense. They're lessons encoded in metaphor. If you train yourself to remain lucid here, to recognize the symbolic nature of what you're seeing, you can begin to use this plane like a mirror. You can ask questions, face fears, heal past traumas, even connect with other beings, teachers, ancestors, soul guides who exist on this plane to help you grow. And beyond that, the soul reaches what Edgar Cayce called the highest levels, the mental and spiritual planes, where form dissolves entirely, and all that remains is consciousness, clarity, and light. You don't dream in these realms the way we think of dreaming. Instead, you remember, you know, you receive. These are the nights when you wake with knowledge you never studied, peace you can't explain, or clarity that cuts through your confusion like sunlight through fog. In this realm, the soul drinks directly from the well of source consciousness. It accesses the Akashic records, the database of every action, thought, and soul journey across time. Some people return with visions of the future. Others remember past lives. Some encounter their higher self and receive instructions for the path ahead. But none of it happens by accident. You access these realms when you are ready, when your soul's integrity is aligned with higher truth, and when you seek with humility rather than ego. That's why intention is everything. Before you sleep, don't just hope for a good dream. Ask, set a direction, request guidance on something specific. Ask to meet your higher self. Ask to see a future probability. Ask for healing for a wound you can't reach with words. When you sleep with intention, your soul listens, and more importantly, so do the guides who surround you. Because you are never alone in the spiritual planes. Whether you remember them or not, you are accompanied every night by beings of light, by guardians, by aspects of yourself more advanced than you realize. And they're waiting for you to stop sleepwalking through your soul's greatest opportunity. And that leads us to what may be the most urgent truth of all. This awakening isn't just happening to you, it's happening to everyone. All over the planet, people are reporting vivid dreams unlike anything they've ever experienced. Sudden spiritual insights that arrive during sleep, encounters with radiant beings, visits to places that don't exist on Earth. There's a reason this is increasing. The fabric between worlds is thinning, humanity's frequency is rising. And the dream world, the realm of the soul, is becoming more active, more accessible, more important than ever before. We are entering a phase of planetary transformation, where the inner world is just as crucial as the outer one. The veil is lifting, not just globally, but nightly. But here's what most people don't realize. As the light increases, so does the response from the dark. Just as more souls are accessing higher guidance, more entities are trying to interfere. It's a war of awareness, a struggle between awakening and unconsciousness, and sleep, the one place where most people have no defenses, becoming a spiritual battlefield. That's why protection is no longer optional. That's why intention before sleep is no longer a luxury, it's survival. Because the more humanity awakens, the more those invested in its unconsciousness fight to keep it asleep. This is why you're here. Why you're hearing this now. Not by coincidence, but by design. Because the era of passive sleep is over. You are being called to participate in your soul's journey, to take responsibility for what happens during the third of your life spent with your eyes closed. No more forgetting, no more drifting. From now on, every night is a portal. Every dream is a key. Every awakening is a choice. You are not just sleeping, you are traveling. And what you do with that journey will determine who you become, not just in this life, but in the lives that follow. There is a reason your soul brought you here, a reason you've begun to question the nature of your dreams, to wonder what's really happening when you lay your head down at night. That curiosity is not just thought, it is a memory, a remembering of what you've always known but were never taught, that the night is not empty, that sleep is not silence, that your soul has always been moving through hidden realms, collecting pieces of your purpose, and now finally you are waking up to bring them home.